Welcome along to another episode of the Toon Under Podcast. It's so close. It's so close. The season is just mere days away. This is often my favorite pod that we do, the preview pod of the first game of the season. And it's always good to get an opposition supporter on. So I am Jack in Brisbane, as usual. And I'll let my guest tonight introduce himself. How are you doing, Paul?
Oh, very good, Jack. Yeah, Paul, I run the Aussie Villans podcast. Love sport podcasts as well. So just the most exciting time of the year, mate. The preparation that we've all put into getting ready for the late nights, early mornings, just very excited.
Yeah, it feels like a long time ago, that last game of the season. There was no international tournament over the summer. Well, no men's international tournament anyway, senior. May was the last game. It feels such a long time ago. Villa and Newcastle obviously both had exciting ends to the season.
It doesn't. It does. It does. I get what you mean. For us, for Villa, it feels like last season was 4 seasons because we had, we had the pre-season tour. We had Steven Gerrard disaster, which I'm trying to block from my mind. And then, you have the breaks and then Emery comes in. It just feels like so many seasons there, Jack. It's just surreal. And you must feel the same when Newcastle's had so much go on in the past, 18 to 24 months.
Yeah. So our takeover was in October 2021, and it's just been crazy since then. We started the podcast around that time, and it's just been 100 miles an hour, but it's been so good. And both clubs are kind of on a bit of an upward trajectory at the moment as well. So that's good to see. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about the pre-season, talk about the games last season. You mentioned the sleep there, the getting up in the middle of the night. You probably haven't missed that, have you? Oh, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard.
I follow so many sports from around the world. I kind of get used to all the different time zones. The lack of sleep hurts, but I think I've got my family who are all aware of what I do, and so I try and set the alarm just a little bit lower. Or you just don't go to bed.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I've got 2 little kids, so I'm kind of chronically sleep deprived anyway. So yeah. But I was laughing when we were in the pre-season tour, and obviously Villa were there as well in the USA, and you had people in the UK complaining about the kickoff times. It was a nice 10 o'clock in the morning for us. It was absolutely perfect.
I was gorgeous. I think one morning I was at work, and I think I might have been working from home, so I had it sitting there, and it was just seeing people I won't say whinge, but complaining about the late nights. I've got to admit, I let them know. I'm sure you did too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little taste of what we go through for 9 months of the year.
Paul,
how come you've ended up following Villa then? You're obviously Australian.
Yeah. I mean, like a lot of Australians, the first sport you play is football or soccer, whatever people want to call it, to be honest. And everyone followed Man United, Liverpool, and Celtic where I lived. I grew up in Frankston in Victoria, very Anglo-Saxon area. And one of my junior coaches walked in wearing a Villa top. There was no sponsorship. It was just different colours. And I must have been 7. I'm 50 now, so that's going to tell you a little bit. And I just fell in love with it. Told him, and it's about 2 weeks later, he must have got them sent over. He gave me all his Villa jerseys from me when he was young. And a year or 2 later, we win the European Cup. So I think I made the right choice.
There you go. There you go. You've seen some success. We've got guys on our podcast who follow Newcastle for no good reason, and they've obviously we haven't won a trophy since 1969. So hopefully that's going to change soon for us. But that's a good start for you for your Villa career.
Oh, Jack, it's going to change for you. There's no doubt. And I've got a lot of Newcastle mates. A special shout out to my mate John. Massive Newcastle fan, listens to this pod all the time. He's from Newcastle, lives here. But he was just saying that just enjoy the ride. And you can't be called bandwagon supporters. You're going to have success. The money brings that in the world game. And I just want to say to Newcastle supporters, enjoy the ride. We know you're real. Newcastle supporters know you're real. So don't worry about success. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah, and it's quite often the case that the journey is actually the best bit anyway. We talk about this quite often, how we had a season last season which was just so special and so memorable for so many reasons. And the hopefully will be a time when we start winning things. Obviously, the first trophy will be special, but the excitement at the moment and the upward trajectory is just such a special feeling, you know?
Yeah.
I think you're dead right what you say there about enjoy the ride. Like, don't stress. If we lose a game, we'll talk about the game that we lost at Villa Park last season. Don't stress about it. It's going to happen. But things are on the right track. So that kind of leads me into what I wanted to talk about first. Villa and Newcastle are obviously traditional big English clubs. Both have been down in the Championship not so long ago. Both have endured Steve Bruce not so long ago. And both
100%.
are now fighting it out for the European places. So
Yeah.
Villa's trajectory has been good. I want to talk about Emery in a little while. But first, I just want to get a sense of how the last sort of 2 years or so, or really since promotion, has been for Villa, and what the kind of general feeling has been around the club.
It's been pretty strange. I think there was a lot of optimism when Gerrard was there, and it wasn't so much about his coaching ability. It was more that what he could bring in terms of other players or other coaches because of his name. And he did early on. You know, we wouldn't have got Philip Coutinho. There's no doubt in the world. But then once we started hearing from him, it was some really strange commentary. And we started to get a bit worried. I'm not saying we were predicting it was going to be bad, but it started to get weird. And the things he was saying, it didn't feel like he was going to be there long term. Our recruitment approach seemed weird. He was playing people out of position. We didn't look fit. So I suppose since we were promoted, there was always been the fear of relegation, Jack. And there was. And then when Gerrard started going wrong, it was that, oh, God, we're going to sack another manager again. And in the last few months has just been some of the most magical time. It's hope. You know, we've got Monchi on board for recruitment. I know you said you're going to touch on Emery, but Emery's there and he's not a short-term kind of, assignment. We've obviously got our, corporate and general manager who used to be the head of, things like the Philadelphia 76ers. So for me, it's beyond the players we're signing. It's what we're doing behind the scenes. Our owners spending money wisely. And we've still got a great academy, and those guys are coming through, and we saw that in the US tour. There's some real talent there. And so right now, I would say we are starting to expect. And I think what we expect is to be that kind of top 6, top 7 club and really fight. And I said it in our own podcast this week. We want to be in contention for that top 4. At certain points in this season, we need to be there. It doesn't matter that we don't, but we need to be really pushing hard for it. Yeah.
The top of the league is going to be so competitive because you've got Newcastle, Villa and Brighton who have upset the apple cart, and there's no big 6 anymore. That's dead. That's dead now. I think it's more of a really competitive top half. I just want to touch on you talked about the academy there. Villa obviously brought Jack Grealish through and they've sold him for 100 million a couple of years ago. Doing that enables you under the financial fair play rules to basically reinvest a lot of that money over a period of time, doesn't it? Villa went out and got, I think Leon Bailey was one of the first ones, and there was Buendia for big money as well. So we'll talk about the signings this summer soon as well, but that does give you a lot of wiggle room, doesn't it? And I think Villa are probably still spending the Grealish money in terms of the money you brought in.
I'd say that's been spent, and I think at the moment we're in a difficult situation where some of the players we have signed, the Dendonkers, and I'm not putting players down, I'm just giving the realistic side of it. I think we get caught up in transfer fees, and you would have seen this with Newcastle and other clubs. And one thing that's not really spoken about is the weekly wages, because that's what kills the club. It's not the transfer fees, it's the weekly wages, and we've got a lot. We've got some of the highest paid players in the Premier League for their standard, if that makes sense. So we've got a lot of pretty much dead wood at the moment, and it's going to be really hard to get some of them out on the money they're on. So that's, whilst we've reinvested the money well from Grealish, there is that worry of the weekly wage bill. It's huge.
Yeah. Newcastle have actually got a bit of, you don't like saying it, but deadwood as well in the squad. So we've got Ryan Fraser and Isaac Hayden and Jeff Hendrick, who were all signed under the previous regime. The wages are too big. Lower Premier League clubs don't want them. They're not good enough. Championship clubs can't afford them. So you end up having these players on the books for a long time. And like you said, it's a real drain on the finances. So that's something that both clubs are kind of grappling with, I think, at the moment, isn't it? And that's why there's such a big gap to bridge between what the old traditional Big Six do, because their commercial income is absolutely astronomical compared to what our clubs are doing.
But our clubs are also, I think, and I've been saying it to people, I think the only shirt that's really sold in the past few years for us has really been guys like Matty Cash. Coutinho sold a few. Martinez sells a lot of jerseys. I mean, he keeps selling jerseys. But the new guys that we've got coming in, which we'll touch on when we get to it, they will sell jerseys. And Newcastle's going to have the same. You're going to have players who are definitely going to start bringing in that revenue. Both our stadiums as well, we don't have the size of the bigger clubs, but that's the beautiful part about following Newcastle and Villa. We still... St. James Park is called St. James Park. Villa Park is Villa Park. How long is that going to actually last, Jack? I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of sort of controversy and opinions around that with Newcastle, especially because we need a bigger stadium for the demand, but it's such a special, unique city centre stadium.
It is.
But the question is it worth moving away somewhere for an extra 15, 20,000 seats? I don't think it is. I think you want to stick with the tradition, but the club will have to work out what to do.
It's really tough, isn't it? And I think you're lucky that you're one city team. And I think that if you do move, I think eventually when success comes, people will accept it. Villa Park's put plans on hold for a 60,000 seat, for our stadium to become 60,000 seats. It needs to. But there's a lot of, if you've been to Villa Park, as you know, there's transport issues there. So there's other things that have to be considered as well.
I went to Villa Park once and we lost 5-1, I think it was. So not nice memories.
Well, probably good memories for me, but I get it.
Yeah. Right, let's talk about Emery then. So there's a little bit of history and intrigue with Emery in Newcastle because we offered him the job before Eddie Howe got it. He's one of the best managers in the league, I think, tactically. Like, you look at his record, I think he's got 11 major trophies. He's done such a good job. I've got some stats about the points that he actually got for Villa. So they picked up 48 points from 26 games under Emery last season. So over a season, that's 70 points, which, if we have a look at this league table, would actually have them a point behind Newcastle if that was extrapolated over the course of a season. As it was, you got to 7th on 61 points and qualified for the Conference League. What's he done that's been so impressive to improve Villa in such a short space of time from what was a pretty disappointing start under Steven Gerrard last season?
It's probably twofold, Jack. One, he's not just a manager. I think you touched on it. He's a coach. He's on the training field. He has great assistants, but he actually gets to know the players, knows their strengths, works out who's going to be able to play in his system. And last year was a lot of him working out who could play that system, and he played it regardless. So a lot of passing out from the back, as we'd know, quick diagonal balls, nothing revolutionary, but revolutionary for us. I'll give you an example. John McGinn was on the outer last year. He didn't look fit. He didn't look happy. He's given belief. He's playing in the positions he needs to play in, and he's become a new man again. He's starting to do things that he does for Scotland. So that's just one example. He has faith in players. Like, sometimes there's players there you just shake your head, and I think Leon Bailey's one of them because he gives you glimpses. But if I don't think he'll be there, but if he is, then I have to trust Emery. So yeah, he's got the tactics. He gets the players to do things on the track that he expects on the pitch. And it sounds simple, but it's actually hard to get people to believe in your system, and they do. So that's probably a basic summary.
He's got the sort of history as well, hasn't he, of doing well with not the biggest clubs, because he was at PSG and Arsenal. He didn't do terribly. I think he was treated a little bit unfairly when he was at Arsenal. But he's probably learned a lot from that experience. But he does seem to have this niche, or he's good at these sort of medium to large size clubs, like Europa League kind of standard clubs who he can go and win trophies with. Why do you think he's so good at that? Do you think it's just the way he coaches and his personality, and the fact he's got the gravitas with the players and the respect of the players at clubs like that?
I also think it's the fact that, and please, I'm not putting down the English side of the game, because I love it, but he has that network throughout Spain, throughout France, Italy, Germany. It's that network that he's built with other coaches. Clubs trust him. That's why we're going to get players in the next few years that no one will expect. I mean, you only have to look at teams like City or Man U over the years, and Arsenal. No one knew these players before. No one knew the players who became legends before. Sorry, my dog's barking. But there's so many players that we didn't know were going to become legends. And I think that's what we get with Emery as well.
Yeah. We were excited about the prospect of him when the news broke. It was a bit unfortunate because it was leaked by somebody, but too soon, and then it was in the middle of a Champions League game for him as well, and then he did a U-turn, and that's fine. It's worked out well for us. It's worked out well for you. I think the standard and the quality of the coaching and the Premier League in general, you've got the money in the Premier League compared to Europe, but it's so high, and I think that's why you've got these teams battling it out, more teams battling it out at the top as well. The big clubs are not going to have it all their own way, because other teams have got better coaches sometimes, better managers, and Emery and Howe are certainly two of those. You talk.
I just wanted to touch on another club, and I just wanted to touch on a club like Tottenham, where people at first bemoaned, who don't know Ange Postecoglou, one of the greatest technical minds in world football. I mean, I'm a Brisbane Roar supporter, and what he did for us at that point, what he did in Japan, short time in Scotland, what he did for Celtic. He's a winner everywhere he goes. And I think that's something that we, as supporters who live in other countries, realise. There are so many good managers there. And the Premier League's just going to get more and more people from that we've never heard of. Like, people from Tottenham who hadn't heard of him, they're going to be really happy with what they see. I can guarantee it.
He's a good bloke as well, a really good bloke, and he speaks well. And I think that's it's a bit worrying for teams that are going to be competing with them, but it's fantastic for the league. It's obviously fantastic for Australia. He's going to go, and he's won things wherever he's been in such a style. So Spurs might ship some goals. They probably will concede goals. They might have a bit of a slow start, but if they stick with him, he's going to be real good for them. So, and it's good to see him getting some love from the Aussies.
Yeah, they might have a bad season. I think that transition with his style of play, and I don't think they have the squad. So as long as, he would have gone in saying that, we're going to have hard times before good. But otherwise, Tottenham are just going to tread water for years. And I mean, not that I care, but, that's what I'm talking about with, managers coming in.
Yeah. Right, let's have a look at the league table from last season again. Villa came 7th there, 61 points. Newcastle obviously 4th, 71 points in the Champions League. What's Villa's aims for the season? You touched on this briefly before, but what's realistic? What do you think they should be going for?
Oh, well, top 8 again with cup runs, because it's a real, as you said before, it's really competitive. There's going to be teams around us who improve as well. I think we should be pushing for top 4 at some stage in the year. At some stage in the year, you're going to be saying, hey, we're a chance here. And then have good, deep cup runs. Make sure we do well in the Europa Conference League. And I think if we stay around about that mark, but we see improvement, then certainly that's going to be a successful year. But we haven't had good cup runs. We get knocked out in the third round of the FA Cup, or we get beaten by really poor teams. Sorry for those teams that have beaten us. Relatively teams that we would consider poor. And so deep cup runs, a real tilt at a cup would be a win for us this year.
Yeah, we had that experience last year where we got to the final of the Carabao Cup.
Yes.
It was a bit of a strange cup run because the World Cup happened, and then there was a lot of games squeezed in just after the World Cup. But it distracted from the league a bit. It did. It definitely did. The league form dropped a little bit, but I think it was worth it to get to that cup final. that it was a big novelty for us to get to the cup final, and the day itself was a little bit. It was a great weekend for the fans that went there, but we lost quite comfortably to Man United. I think the event got to them. It had been so long since we'd been to a cup final, but yeah, it can have that effect, but it's always good. And when was the last time Villa actually won a trophy? They were in the cup final in 2000, weren't they?
Yeah.
I don't know when they actually.
We're good at getting to cups, but we lose most. So I'd have to go back and have a look again because it's been so long. But just to make cup finals and make an FA Cup final and stuff like that, they're magical weeks. Like I remember your week last year and all my Newcastle friends, and the city was just absolutely buzzing. So you'd do that again, even if you lost. That build up and that excitement, winning great. But as we've said earlier in this discussion, the journey is everything, and that's something I want to reiterate to Newcastle fans and Villa fans. Enjoy every single win. Don't take them for granted, because it'll come at some point where you will win things, and then the wins along the way get forgotten. You only remember cup win or where you finish in the league. Enjoy every single game.
Yeah,
I really mean that.
I can tell you what we enjoyed a lot last season was Villa's draw at Anfield, because that was the stage where Liverpool were on a run. They were winning. They'd won something like 9 or 10 in a row, and they were chasing us down hard. And that was the one game that I got up for in the middle of the night that didn't involve Newcastle. And it was amazing result for us, because it meant that all we had to do was get a point against Leicester. But it was also a big result for Villa, wasn't it? Because you were still up there battling for a European spot at that stage.
Yeah, we were, and I had a lot of Newcastle mates who were up with me messaging, and it was really like there was a little bit of rivalry the last couple of years between Villa and Newcastle, but I kind of think it's faux. I think when we really realise, we're similar clubs in terms of our supporters just love the club. We want to win. I mean, I know we have rivals, but we don't have a rival at the moment. I mean, Birmingham is not our rival right now.
Same as Sunderland, yeah.
And so for us, I think it is the established teams that are the enemies, and we shouldn't be enemies. We should be enemies this weekend, but culturally we're not.
That all started when we got relegated, and there was a few Villa fans with a bedsheet who was saying stop on the time and stuff. So, and what football fans, it's just you hold the bitterness, don't you? You keep the receipts, as my Australian friends like to say. But I think there's definitely a sense now, though, that the two clubs are on the similar trajectory. We, like you said, our rivals, our enemies are the big clubs who want to push us out and keep us out. So I think that's the way it'll go.
They tried to do that with your ownership, and I can't stand that, the hypocrisy. I mean, where does money come from in the end? It all comes from somewhere that's not good. Right? All good. We'd be helping homeless, and we'd be doing all these different kind of things. Money talks, and don't be hypocrites. Look at the Live Tour in golf.
Yeah,
Pete already joined with them within 18 months. So
yeah. Like you said, the Premier League is awash with dirty money. So it's just the way it is, isn't it? If you want to compete, unfortunately, you more or less have to be bought by a nation state or somebody else who's ridiculously rich. So we're not going to complain about that now. We're on the right track, like you said. Last season's games between the two teams were very contrasting. So there was a 4-0 win for us at St James's Park just after Gerrard had left. That came off the back of Villa had actually just beaten Brentford, I think, in the caretaker manager. And then there was that game at St James's Park. So we were lucky to not have the new manager bounce for that one. That was a comfortable win in the end for us. Then there was a 3-0 win for Villa at Villa Park. That was actually the most we were outplayed, we were outfought, we were outrun. That was our worst performance of the season. I think it was the one game last season where we were really disappointing, but a lot of that was to do with the way Villa played. What were your kind of takeaways from those two games? And do you think there's going to be any sort of residual feelings or thoughts from those games going into this game this weekend?
Well, yeah, I mean, the thoughts, as you just said, they were two just such contrasting games. The first game was a bit of a shock because we thought, with the manager bounce, so we were going to be competitive, and you guys just completely showed why you're in the Champions League. It was a fantastic performance. And then our performance for the 3-0 win was, please, if Newcastle supporters hate me after this, it was the most satisfying win of just the style we played, and 3-0 was probably, in all honesty, flattering.
Yeah,
it was just a performance. So, I think it showed why we chose the manager we chose.
Yeah. The thing about that game as well for Villa, you'd been on a good winning run, but you hadn't actually beaten anyone, I don't think, at that point in and around the Champions League or in the same place in the league table. So that's why I can understand when you say that was really satisfying. And that's why I was talking about Emery's tactics before, because he did a job on Eddie Howe. And nobody does that, you know? Like, Howe's a very smart tactical coach. He was out thought, and the team just it was at the end of a run of hard away games for us as well, to be fair. So it was in sort of, there was fatigue in and things like that. But yeah, no, it was a very comfortable win for Villa that day. And I think there's going to be hopes of revenge or getting back on that a little bit this weekend.
A lot of people, Jack, is saying that the weekend game is going to be really open. I think from a Villa perspective, it's actually going to be really cagey. I think we will be going for a smash and grab, because a point for us in the opening game away from a Champions League club, it would certainly be a great result for us. I can't imagine in the first 20 minutes to half an hour we're going to be going all out. I think we're going to try and survive as long as we can. They'll still play some nice ball, and we'll create opportunities because the team's got playmakers everywhere now. And that comes back to that selling of Grealish. One player who did everything. We've got 5 or 6 who can take it on. So I think you're going to want to score early. And I think the longer it goes, you're going to be worried about that smash and grab, because that's what we'll be going for.
Yeah. And there has been a pre-season game between the teams as well, which was very open. It was 3-3. This was quite funny because we played this new system, which was like a 3 at the back thing, and there was a couple of players in there who were definitely not going to be playing in this game, as there often is in pre-season. But I think that Howe was deliberately experimenting in that game to try and not give anything away about what might happen in this game. Even though the way we play in our system is pretty set in stone, I think he just didn't want to. He thinks about these things. He doesn't want to give any kind of advantage if he can avoid it. So that was a pretty exciting game. There was goals flying in all over the place. How's Villa's pre-season been generally, apart, like with that game included as well? They were in America as well. So how's it been for the pre-season? And
it's been
how have the signings been?
Oh, it's been sensational. So, Tillemans and Diaby, Torres have been. Torres has been the player we thought he would be. Diaby's got a stack of pace, and the player that's really, probably what people would consider the worst signing of the 3, and they're not bad signings. Tillemans has just been unbelievable. We haven't been beaten pre-season, and it's the style of play. We've been plugging in young players, and players will probably go out on loan, and they've scored goals and been creative. It's really exciting. I'm trying to keep a lid on it, Jack, but I can't imagine there's not going to be some good games this year, if that makes sense. We're going to get some. We're going to beat some really good teams this year.
Yeah,
and that's the exciting part.
Diaby was linked heavily with Newcastle for about at least 12 months, and it was thought that we were going to be after him, but his numbers from Leverkusen are fantastic, and he looks like I was talking to Seb Stafford-Bloor, actually, who works for Tifo Football, and he's based in Germany, and he said he thinks he can be like a Champions League, like at latter stages of Champions League quality player, So that's a real coup, isn't it, for Villa to get somebody of that stand, especially because he was nearly going to go to Saudi Arabia as well.
Yeah, Diaby and Torres is just a rock, and I think people will be surprised at how good Villa's backline is, and I knew that from the start, that we're going to build from the back. Best goalkeeper in the world. People can argue that with me, but he is. And in the backline, Mings and Konza, completely different players under Emery. They run with the ball. They're happy. They make mistakes. So I just think now that gives that creativity for Kamara to give the ball to Tillemans, to give the ball to Diaby, Torres to make runs. It's just a very different team.
I saw Konza run through the whole team and stick it in the top corner in the States, didn't he? So I don't know where that came from.
I just think the gaps kept opening, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm just going to keep going." He said that as much. He said best goal that he'll ever score. And I hope not, because I want him to have that confidence to go and do that occasionally. And I think the players down back now, that solid back line that Villa has not had in decades, is going to allow that to happen occasionally. Mings or Bonza, to do something that we're just not expecting.
Yeah, it was absolutely expected. I was watching it thinking, is that actually Konza? That was amazing. Yeah. So, all right.
I think he was in the top 3 or 4 players that players could not get past him last year.
Yeah.
The pre-season, we put him out on the right, just as cover at the moment for Merino. And that's another great signing that we didn't expect from Spain. So if he can do that for the first few games until Merino's back, that's a bonus.
Yeah.
Can't even go Carlos in the team at the moment, so it's good signs.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Moreno in a bit as well, because he was one of the players who terrorized us last season. So when we get to look at the Villa lineup, we'll talk about him. But I'm going to flash up the lineup that I think Newcastle will play.
Yeah,
this is quite difficult because there's a few unknowns in here. There's a few positions up for grabs. Everyone's had a pretty good pre-season. We're unbeaten as well. We've won 5 and drawn 2 in pre-season.
Yes.
But I think it'll be Pope in goal. I think it'll be the same back 4 from last season: Trippier, Shah, Botman, and Burn. There's a little doubt over Shah, who picked up an injury in the USA, but if he doesn't play, Lascelles will slot in. The midfield 3, I think Bruno and Joe Linton are set in stone.
Yeah.
I've gone with Anderson, who had a fantastic pre-season. Other fans might not know too much about him. He's a young local Geordie lad who was in and around the squad last season. He made a few sub appearances, but he's been amazing in pre-season. He's got 4 goals and 4 assists. So I think it's going to be difficult to not have him in the team for this game. We're probably going to have Tonali, new signing Tonali, and probably Longstaff on the bench. I'm swaying towards maybe Longstaff actually starting after all the way Eddie Howe works, but I think Anderson couldn't have done any more to deserve his start. Miggy, I think, is set in stone on the right hand side. Miggy Almiron, he's had another good pre-season, and he scored an absolutely amazing goal against Villa last season at St James's Park. I think Anthony Gordon has had a really good under-21 tournament. He got player of the tournament. We're going to see him now fly, I think, after his move from Everton. He's taken a while to get up to speed, but I think he's going to start this, and I think Isak will start up front. He's a genuine world-class striker. The exciting thing for Newcastle is the bench now, because we're going to have the likes of Tonali. We're going to have Livramento who's going to be on the bench now. He's signed. We're going to have Harvey Barnes, who I know has got a good scoring record against Aston Villa. We're going to have Callum Wilson. There's going to be Willock when he's fit. So all of a sudden, the depth is looking good. We're kind of at that stage of our development. It'll be a 4-3-3. It'll be the high octane, like you said. I think it'll be a quick start. I think we'll go for it at the beginning, and we'll try and use the crowd. Anything in there, Paul, that you're looking at that gives you concern, or that that stands out for you from that team?
Yeah, first of all, Tonali, is he not fit? Because I'd have him in that team.
Yeah, no, he's fit. He is fit. He's played most of pre-season, but just knowing the way that Eddie Howe works, he likes to bed players in slowly. So I think if Anderson doesn't start, I mean, Tonali could start, but he usually likes to keep people on the bench for the first few games and let them get up to, see what the Premier League's all about and get up to speed with that. So it wouldn't be a surprise if he did start, but I think the way Anderson's played, I think he deserves a start for this one.
That's a fair call. I mean, of course, I'm not one of those supporters I'm a glass half empty guy. So I think your depth is sensational. And I think some of the big clubs, their depth's nowhere near it. And this is why I think you'll stay top 4. Of course, I'm concerned. If this was at Villa Park, I've got to say I probably wouldn't be as concerned. But just a really good squad, mate. I'd be happy if that was, I don't want to get rid of Villa players, but if it was reverse squad, I'd be pretty happy with that one myself. I don't think Gordon's going to take off. He's the one player of yours. All his history does not look good. He doesn't score enough goals. I know that you think he'll come through. He's the one player I question in any squad. I think he's paid too much for him. I'm probably going to be proven wrong. Happy to be. But he's the one player I'm not worried about. I don't like the way he plays.
No, it's fair. That's fair enough, because there was a lot of Newcastle fans who were saying that last season as well. Everton fans were obviously saying that his goal and assist output has never been great, but I think he's versatile. He's that, and he's the typical Eddie Howe player. He'll run all day. I always talk about this goal last season at West Ham. Joe Linton scored a goal where Gordon won the ball in the right back position, and then he passed it off and it got sprayed forward. So there is high hopes for him this season. It was a big fee, as it often is with English players.
Yeah.
But the signs are encouraging. But having said that as well, it wouldn't be a surprise if Harvey Barnes did start this, because he grabbed 2 goals in the last pre-season game, and I know that he's scored, I think it's 5 goals against Villa, and I think he's got 4 assists against Villa as well. So he likes playing against Villa.
That's why I think he'll play. It's horses for courses, and your squad's going to do that this year, and we're going to do that. We're not going to see the same 11. We're not going to rely on the same 11 either of our squads. And the versatility you brought up, that is exactly what we're going to be this year. It's going to be, we're going to pick a lot of the bigger clubs, I can tell you that.
The options are great. Yeah, it's great to see.
Both
right,
clubs.
Let's have a look at the Villa team that you've selected. So I know that Moreno and Ramsey, who absolutely killed us last season on that left-hand side, they're not there. So they're both injured until September. I asked you to send me this through, and you sent through the names, and I was trying to work out who was going to go where and what was going to happen. So I've put it in what I think might be the position, because you've got 4 central midfielders in there. So go on, talk us through this and talk us through the rationale.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think with the backline set at the moment, Moreno would play. You've got the ability for Matty. There's a lot of versatility with Matty Cash and guys like that to come into the team. You know, you're looking at a Polish international who can't get in. I think McGinn's the versatility. It's more of a diamond in the midfield. You're going to have the defenders push up. Kamara, Konza, Mings, they're going to overlap. So I think Watkins is not the out-and-out striker that I potentially see long-term for us. And I've got a Watkins shirt with his name on the back. So, but I just think neither of our teams are going to be traditional. It's going to be people dropping back and people going forward and supporting. And I just like the idea of almost a supporting striker there at the top of the midfield. So it looks narrow, but the defenders are push up, and we did that last year. There will be width.
Yeah,
I think we'll close you down try and close you down in the middle and stop your run. But yeah, I think that it's going to be almost a rotating midfield in a diamond.
Yeah, and that's what happened last season, because Villa were playing out from the back, and then there were timing it, and they were playing direct balls up towards Watkins and Ramsey, and that was what causes all the problems. So the midfield was bypassed a little bit in that game, and it went up front, and it stuck. Watkins played really well. Newcastle fans are worried about the prospect of Diaby running at Dan Burn, because Dan Burn's not the quickest. So if he's drifting out to the right hand side as well, that could cause some issues. I'm interested in what you said about Watkins there, because he was on fire goal scoring wise, wasn't he, for Villa last season? So and he's 27. So what's your thoughts about that?
He just doesn't take the chances that he needs to as a striker. He works as hard as you could ever imagine. But if you're looking at actually being a permanent top 4, you tell me a top 4 team that doesn't have or even top 6 team that doesn't have a striker that puts close to 20 goals a season away. Watkins has never hit 20 goals. So if you're looking to push up into the top 4, even your very good players have to be replaced at some stage. I'm not saying Watkins stay in the squad and on the bench, but he can't. We can't be pushing top 4 if Watkins is our key striker. And I'm sorry, people are going to slam me for that, but no top club in the history of football that hasn't had a striker hitting 20-odd goals.
It's probably part of the natural progression of clubs like ours as well, where, we've got Callum Wilson, and then we just went and brought in Isak last summer. So for what looks like a bargain, 63 million now, considering some of the fees that are going around for players, strikers that the elite big clubs are buying at the moment. So I think this is going to be one of the games where it's going to be the most interesting tactically, because of the 2 managers and because of the history with what happened last season. It's going to be really interesting. Like you said, we're going to try and come out quick. I think we're going to go for it. And if we get an early goal, that could settle things down. But like you said as well, if it gets to half an hour towards half time, into 60 minutes and it's 0-0, we're going to be worried about that smash and grab. Or, I think Villa have got more about them as well than just sitting back and defending. It's going to be they're going to be pressing, like you said, and I think they're going to create plenty of chances of their own as well.
We'll definitely create chances. That both teams will create chances. There's too many ball players in both our teams now, which is so exciting to see. We will play not as high a line as we will for most of the season. We play a high line. I hate this term, but a keeper sweeper with Martinez allows that to happen. You're going to get some close calls. There's going to be a couple offsides, but we've continued to do that pre-season. We're going to play one of the highest lines. And tactically, what that means is that we shorten the pitch. So it's going to be harder for people to play through us. And that's what people don't get about a high line. It's not trying to just catch people offside. It's actually making 2/3 to a half of a pitch and almost playing five-a-side football.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. So let's have a prediction then. So I'll let you go first. You're the guest. What do you think in terms of a score for this game?
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be 1-1. We're actually going to take the lead in the first half. Half time, I'm going to be nervous, thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to get 3 points. You'll attack, and eventually that pressure is going to give in, and it's going to be a 1-1 game. And I think Villa fans will be more satisfied than Newcastle, but I don't think Newcastle fans, if they were given the point right now, I would be really surprised if people don't. Either side didn't take a point in the first game.
I love the specificness of that answer. That's fantastic. I think it might be a draw as well. I think it might be high scoring draw 2-2. I think there's going to be goals in this. First game of the season is always hard to predict what's going to happen as well. The preseason game, I don't think you can read too much into them because it's a different players playing. But the fact that there was a lot of gold in that, I think, could maybe have a bearing on this. But yeah, I just think it's going to be a really good game between two good teams. If you offered me a draw now, I wouldn't take it because we're at St James's Park, and I think that we can beat anybody at St James's Park, and we will beat most teams. But a point against another European challenging team at the end of the day is not going to be a bad result. So I will wish Villa well for the season after 2:30 on Saturday, which is what time this one is. It's an absolute killer of a kickoff time. Anything else you wanted to add there, Paul, or you think we need to know about Villa before we say goodbye?
Yeah. Look, there's going to be the down games for Villa this year. It's going to be a year that we just need to embed the Emery philosophy. So it's an exciting time. I think we're going to have some big cup runs. I said that earlier, and that really excites me because the cups still mean a lot to the traditional clubs. And to the Newcastle fans, I implore you to enjoy the journey. We know you're real fans. Don't be stressed about being called plastic or bandwagon. It's just, we know that, real football fans know the truth. So I'm going to dislike you strongly when we play you. But I'll be secretly, outside of us playing, I'll be secretly going for the turn, for sure.
Excellent. Fantastic stuff. Paul, thanks very much for your time. We'll keep in touch through the season and we'll speak again, I'm sure, before the return game. It's been brilliant to get your insights, to talk to somebody else in Brisbane as well, and a football fan in Brisbane. So, Paul, thanks very much. Take care, and we'll see you again.
And up the Villa.
All the best. Cheers.
Thanks, Jack.